Happy Friday afternoon, Facebook friends. I am finally, after like over 2 months, going to do a book talk on Trevor Bryan's The Art of Comprehension. I know I promised this back, I think it was over Christmas break or shortly thereafter, and I bought the book as soon as it came out. Had intended to do something, and I work in the classroom like a lot of you do, and just things happen, and I try to get things. I still owe you one on Don Lynn Miller and Colby Sharp's Game Changer. Also, I'm getting there. I'm going through books as fast as I can. But anyway, this book I bought as soon as I saw it. The title jumped out at me. The cover is so, oh my gosh, it just really jumps out and grabs you, doesn't it? It's by Trevor Bryan, and the subtitle also, Exploring Visual Text to Foster Comprehension, Conversation, and Confidence. Forwards by Dr. Mary Howard. Gotta love that. Love her. And then also the illustrations. Do you recognize that? Peter Reynolds of Ish and the Dot fame. As soon as I saw it, I thought, how in the world did he get Peter Reynolds to do his illustrations? So it caught my attention. But the main reason that it caught my attention is I tend to gravitate toward PD books that, and this is going to sound really weird, but those of you who know me, you're used to my strangeness. I tend to gravitate toward those that kind of have a little conversation with me, and that conversation always includes the book telling me something and then me responding with something along these lines. Oh, yeah. Oh, right, exactly. And this kind of does that before I even get to the introduction. Once I started reading, oh my gosh, I couldn't stop. I read it all the way through. And I now have it all, annotated, and I'm ready to use it in my classroom. But this book was kind of one of those that spoke to me. And when I say spoke to me, what I mean is there are certain things that you read and certain books that you read that it's almost like the author is confirming for you or solidifying something that you already kind of knew intuitively. It's almost like this, little invisible friend that's been following you around for years, and you've been, slowly noticing him creeping around. I know that's really creepy, so don't get freaked out. I'm not going to turn on the lights. No, I'm kidding. But that's kind of, what I experience when I read a book like this. Because, and I'll tell you a fast little story. When my first year of teaching, like everyone else, I had like a 15-page script. I'm exaggerating, but, Lord, and I'm going to, introduce this and go over our procedures in the classroom. And, looking back, I'm like, oh, dear God, it was ridiculous. I remember about 30 minutes in, it was 5th grade. I had a huge class. I had like 32 kids. And I remember about 30 minutes in of me just blabbing on and on and on, looking into the eyes of these kids, and they're literally like about to fall asleep. They're like all in comas, and thinking to myself, how can I save this? And suddenly it just occurred to me that what I did is I kind of put the script away, and I said, okay, I passed out some paper really fast, and I said, everyone, draw a picture of a man flying over a building. And so they did, and we all just I just walked around and talked to them about their pictures, and then we shared out, and we shared how, everyone's picture, the mental, the picture you see in your mind of the man flying over the building is slightly different, blah, blah, blah. So then I moved on to, and I was just kind of pulling this out of my head, that we can tell stories in a lot of different ways, and that writing isn't necessarily about words or grouping words together in a correct order as much as it is using a set of symbols, using symbols to represent a thought or idea. And I remember I grabbed my computer and I pulled up some hieroglyphics and different things, and pulled up the McDonald's symbol, and we talked about what that means to us. And so from there, that idea just kind of grew. Where the next year, I then started with wordless picture books, and we started kind of talking about how use we could use illustrations as symbols to represent ideas, and that we could tell a story using only pictures. And so that I've kind of been toying with that idea already. Now Trevor takes it to another level, and gives us a framework to look at using mood to more deeply comprehend and interact with text. And let me read this one little line from the introduction. He says, think of the Art of Comprehension not as a book about visual literacy, but as a book about literacy with an expanded view of what constitutes text. And that's where, this is in the first few pages. And I'm like, right, exactly. So this takes me back to, what I had been thinking and doing in the classroom. And so the most powerful thing that I have found about this is because Trevor uses those different things. He's starts with looking at art, and then moving into looking at mood in text, and showing you how those two things connect, and how it's really just the same thing. It's just a different medium, right? And so, but the most powerful part of this is that it breaks down walls for striving readers. Who it balances things out for every kid in your classroom. And I can see already how students who normally would have a difficult time maybe analyzing text, or looking at elements of plot within text, and connections, character growth, and things like that, character changes and development, I can see how using Trevor's ideas with mood would provide something very powerful to grant access to those kids. And so that's a very one of the most powerful parts of this book, in my opinion. As he moves toward the end of the book, he then flips it, which I think every lesson should do, to writing, and we look at the reciprocity between reading and writing, and how it's really just the same thing. So now we're just looking at text and telling stories, and relaying ideas from the perspective of a writer instead of from a reader's perspective. One of the things that he discusses there is calling this reciprocity a cycle, and how that mood can help form this stronger foundation or underpinning of the cycle. And I found that very interesting, because, again, it kind of solidifies and supports something that I have already thought and know, and that's what I touched on before, that reading and writing instruction are really two parts of a whole. And it is a cycle. And it reminds me of when I first moved to Texas. I grew up in this small little town in southern Kansas, and there were two main streets. I think it was 8th and 11th, and those were like the main drags. And so when you learn to drive, there were no traffic problems. You had a couple of stop signs and a few stoplights to deal with, but you already knew where to go. There were no navigation difficulties. You didn't need GPS or a map or anything like that. Well, so then I moved to Fort Worth, and man, it was just like this huge kind of mess. And I moved to this town that was kind of outside of Fort Worth that had a roundabout. I had never driven on a roundabout, and this roundabout went around the courthouse. And so, of course, the way a roundabout works, you have to exit whenever you're ready. Well, I get on. I think there are 2 or 3 lanes to this thing, and I get on the inside lane. I'm a teenager, and have never driven in heavy traffic before. And so I found myself just going around this loop like 10 times trying to figure out how to get off of this thing. Finally, I figured it out. I guess the point I'm making is, in calling it a cycle, is it doesn't really matter where you get on. It's all going in the same place. And so whether you're looking at text and looking at mood as a reader, and regardless of what area you're focusing on, you might be looking at elements of plot or just really anything. It doesn't really matter where you start. It's all going to revolve and go to the same exact place. And so that's why when you flip it and look at it from the perspective of a writer, you're then saying, okay, so as I'm going around this loop and I'm coming around to the other side, so now what has the writer done to lead me and to give me that feeling that the character is happy or sad, or is in some kind of angst, or has changed in some way? What are the moves, the craft moves that the writer has done to help me as the reader to comprehend those things? And so really powerful way to wrap up the book. I cannot recommend this enough. I'm going to use it in my classroom next year, I can already tell you. I've already marked it up 10 ways to Sunday, and I will read it again over the summer, I'm sure, and get prepared. The Art of Comprehension, Trevor, Bryan. I'm sure I missed a bunch of stuff, but you guys know me. I'm just improvising, so hey. Message me if you have any questions about it. Oh, one more thing. I like to pair books. It's just how I read. So when I read one book, I always reread something that I've already read. I know that's weird. It's really weird. I reread something I've already read that kind of connects to me in some way. And to me, that has just always been a very powerful strategy. The one that jumped out to me when I read this, and I went to my shelf immediately and got it, is Renew by Shauna Coppola. And I won't go into it now. I have done a book talk on this. It is in my, or an interview with her or something. It's somewhere buried in my videos. Go look for it on Facebook. And but this is an amazing title, guys. And I've read this twice now, and I'm sure I'll reread it a third time. It's that good. So anyway, Art of Comprehension, Trevor, Bryan, get it. I would order it directly from the publisher. That's what I usually do. You can get it a little bit cheaper, actually, so most of the time. So message me if you have any questions.